on, guys? It's your boy Luke here for our core picks at the Sony Open. I hope everybody had a great week last week. Our core picks ended up coming through for some nice finishes. Xander had that eagle on the 72nd hole of the day to really vault himself up the board. Of course, Jon Rahm ended up finishing runner-up. We did have an outright ticket on him, which didn't end up coming through, but boy oh boy did we come through with our single entry lineup for DK. I'll go up and put it up on the screen here. You guys can see not the biggest contest that I entered, but we ended up finishing in the top 5 across some really nice contests. So can never complain about $2,700 of profit, and we look to take that momentum into this week as well. Here in this video, a little bit of a different format. We're going to go through my Patreon projections and my top 6 core plays for this week, one in every price range, and you'll be able to see some of my metrics on the board for pretty much every player. So we'll be doing some comparisons to some of the guys priced around them. So rather than just isolating on these 6 players, going to be a little bit of a more holistic look at the slate. We'll also be looking at some of the shots gained metrics live for some of these players. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments at the end whether you prefer this type of format or in the past where I've pre-made graphics and that type of thing. Just trying new things out here, trying to see what sticks the best. But without any delay at all, let's hop right into it with our core picks for this week. Alright guys, on the screen you guys can see our projections for this week. Of course, if you want access to these at any time, make sure to go ahead and join the Patreon. Link will be in the description, only $1 for the month. You get access to all of this as it changes up until lock. Obviously, ownership going to change quite a bit as we get a little bit more information towards Wednesday. And of course, even my projections can change from time to time if we get any type of weather update. But with that being said, we're going to start off with our pick up top, our spend up option, that being Cameron Smith this week at $11,200. And yes, we were able to ride him last week in order to victory. And I think he's going to come out and absolutely come out firing once again. He comes in as the #1 course fit rank, the #1 recent form rank, and of course the #1 total model rank as well this week. He's not only been in top form, he's also a perfect course fit here. So let's go ahead and dive into why Cameron Smith is such a good course fit here. So first and foremost, these are the shots gained metrics over the last 24 measured rounds. So while I'm using a little bit of a longer sample size for my course history rank, we're going to be able to get the idea real quick why I like Cameron Smith so much. So first and foremost, this is a golf course at just 7,044 yards that does not prioritize distance off the tee, nor accuracy. These are some of the hardest fairways to hit on all of the PGA Tour. Where you're really going to make your hay this week is with your approach play and, of course, your putting. And what Cameron Smith has been doing of late that has really separated himself and made him such a standout over this fall, and, of course, last week with that win, is his approach play, getting over half a stroke per round on a approach. If we take a look at his putting, still been very red hot. And a little bit of encouraging sign here as well is that he's always been a good putter on Bermuda. So he's clearly found something on these very grainy surfaces over there at Kapalua, was able to sink a lot of putts. Is going to have a very similar surface this week over there at Waialae. If you look into the stats even more, top 10 in the world in birdie or better percentage. Very good across all 3 types of scoring there, showing just how well-rounded of a player that he is. And where he really separates himself in terms of the metrics is going to be with the shots gained approach from the 50 to 125 yard mark. Those are your feel wedges, really not a full shot for any of these tour players. He is able to hit those very, very well. Nothing else stands out too much. I mean, very good sand player. You would expect that from an Australian. Going to have plenty of bunkers in play at Waialae. And of course, the putting stats going to be off the roof from within 10 feet. So that's going to be our setup option for this week. Right now, looking at about 26.6% projected ownership, which sure, one of the highest marks on the slate. But this guy is coming off a win. One of the safest picks in all of the slate to go ahead and make the cut this week. And is going to be my spend up option for the Sony Open. Next up, we have Taylor Gooch at $9,100 as my second man in this week. You can see very respectable marks in terms of course fit ranking, recent form ranking, and of course total model ranking as well here for the Sony Open. He's actually my second ranked player on the entire slate, so not a surprise that he would come in as my second man in. Let's move over to the metrics and why I'm really trying to hunker down on Gooch here. First and foremost, last week, didn't look his best, started off a little bit shaky, but really rounded into form over the weekend. That was not a good setup for him. In fact, I faded him in DFS last week because of the lack of elite distance. But here at Waialae, the opposite couldn't be more true. This is a golf course where shorter hitters more than get away with that problem. And again, like I said before, we're looking for guys that are hitting their irons very well and can make a ton of putts, specifically on Bermuda grass. And that is exactly what Taylor Gooch has been doing, gaining 3/4 of a stroke per round on approach. That is one of the highest numbers in this field. In fact, I believe it's the highest number of anybody in this field over that stretch. His putting has been slightly above average. He's typically actually a better putter than that, typically gaining closer to 1/4 of a stroke per round. And on Bermuda grass, though he's slightly worse than his baseline, is still a positive in that category. So if he goes ahead, brings the approach play like we expect, he's also one of the more accurate drivers of the golf ball. So if we go ahead and take a look over here, Taylor Gooch, the metrics don't bear it out over the last 24 rounds. Again, a relatively small sample size. But if you were to spread it out to more of like a season-long type of average, Taylor Gooch is going to be in the top 20th percentile of all PGA Tour players. So with his lack of elite distance off of the tee, with that approach play that we've seen of late, is somebody that I'll be targeting in pretty much all formats for fantasy this week, whether it's outrights, for DFS, and of course here on DraftKings. In terms of his ownership, we are looking at right around 22.2%. Also not somebody that's being overlooked, but at the same time, he's such a good course fit. He's coming in with absolutely stellar form. There's just no holes we can poke in his game. So anytime I'm making a fade, you usually want to try and make sure we're hunkering down on some type of a deficiency that exists. And with Taylor Gooch, I just cannot identify that. So we'll be all over him this week, much like a Cameron Smith. Our next core pick is going to be Russell Henley as our bread and butter option. We haven't seen him for quite some time, much like pretty much everyone else in this field. Obviously had a few guys over there for the Tournament of Champions. But in terms of a course fit, Russell Henley, right up there among the elite, comes in at number 2 in the field, number 15 in terms of his recent form rank. And a deep dive into the metrics is going to very quickly show us why we like him here. First of all, gaining nearly 0.6 shots gained per round on approach. The putter hasn't even been there of late, right? Over the last 24 rounds, actually losing strokes putting. But one thing we know about Russell Henley is that he's one of the best putters in the world. He's also one of the streakiest putters in the world. When he gets hot with that flat stick, watch out, because he's able to put up an 8 to 10 under round pretty much every single day. And if we take a look at his historical baseline on these surfaces, he's gaining nearly 1/3 of a stroke per round on Bermuda grass. So I expect a lot of positive regression for Russell Henley in this situation. And if he can continue the momentum we've seen with the irons, he's also been one of the best iron players in the world for quite some time, going to have a massive week here. So Russell Henley, it's just a slam dunk course pick here. Anybody, if you were considering just the best iron player and putter in the world, able to ignore around the green and off the tee, he would definitely jump to pretty much everyone's list. So going to see plenty of ownership here for Russell Henley. In fact, I have him as the highest owned play on the slate at 26.9%. Anytime we have core picks, a lot of times they're going to be the chalk, right? They're the picks that make a whole lot of sense, and clearly the public going to be keen to that. So we'll see if that ownership climbs and climbs and climbs throughout the week. But if it stays below 30%, is going to be somebody that I'll be trying to get leverage on. Our next core pick here is going to be Joel Dahmen as our value play. He's going to cost you $7,600 this week. And if you take a look at his metrics, just very consistent across the board. Decent course fit ranking, top 20 for this field, top 10 recent form rank. And even though recent form isn't something that I'm really looking at this week, just a little bit less important because we haven't seen these guys for quite some time, still great to see that Joel Dahmen has been doing it in a very sustainable fashion. So first and foremost, like everybody else on this list, has been absolutely striping the irons of late. If you're somebody who's new to golf DFS, by far the most consistent part of a player's game week to week is going to be their approach play. The second most consistent will be off the tee. And the two parts of your game that can flip-flop week in and week out are going to be your chipping and your putting. Those are by far the most volatile parts of this sport. So anytime we have people that are coming in, gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, we can be relatively confident that they will continue to do so. In terms of his putting, he's been actually gaining of late. That's why we've seen him have some of these top end performances. Even though for his career, he is a slight negative on this surface. If you also are new to the channel here, people get used to Bermuda grass over time. It's a very nuanced surface. You deal with grain changes, which is essentially the way that the grass is growing. It'll either grow upwards or downwards based on how you're looking at it, and it actually has an impact on how the ball rolls. Now, if you grow up on the West Coast or the central part of the United States, you're not used to that type of effect. You don't have Bermuda grass greens. In fact, you have POA, may have bent grass greens, but over on the East Coast, particularly in the southeast part of the United States, or tropical conditions like we have over here in Hawaii, you're going to have Bermuda grass. It's the only type of grass that can sustain and survive in that type of environment. And you get these type of grain changes, which really throw the players off from time to time. So if anybody's new here, I know from time to time I get that question. That's why short game putting on Bermuda grass can be so important, but also why people improve over time. So we've seen a lot of improvement of late. All of these measured rounds have been on Bermuda grass. So that is of note there. He's gained a quarter of a stroke per round on Bermuda grass over his last 24 measured rounds. And again, all of those have been on Bermuda grass. And other things that we can look at here with a Joel Dahmen, in terms of his par 4 scoring, number 55 in the field. It's right about average there. Number 46 in terms of par 3 scoring, which is great to see. We only have 2 par 5s this week. So because he's not the longest player on tour, you shouldn't expect him to be very good on par 5s. But that isn't a really big issue this week since there's only 2. If there's anything that Joel Dahmen is good at with his off-the-tee play, it is his accuracy. The guy doesn't miss many fairways at all. And we know at Waialae, hitting the fairway, a lot more important than getting it out there with your distance. So in terms of a course fit, Joel Dahmen pretty much checking every box we're looking for. The approaches from 150 to 175 yards, he's been well on top of them. And even the approaches from up close, 50 to 125 yards, in the top half of the field for that category. So much like the other guys on this list, pretty much checking every box that we're looking for. And again, yes, a little bit chalky. 16.8% projected ownership there. But again, when a guy is checking all of the boxes that we're looking for, maybe except for the shots gained Bermuda number that we have right there, you're still gonna want to go ahead and play him on this slate. Next up, for our diamond in the rough, so somebody who in the $69, up to $7,100 range, I think just being a little bit overlooked on this slate is going to be Adam Schenk. So not chalk by any means, only 6.7% expected ownership here. And in terms of a course fit ranking, giving us what we're looking for. He's not the longest player off the tee, but he is accurate. He's usually very stout with his approach play. And though he's not the best putter on Bermuda, he's a little bit better on bent grass, gains closer to a third of a stroke on that surface, is still a positive in that category. So let's do a little bit more of a deeper dive on Adam Schenk's game here. So first and foremost, over the last 24 measured rounds, gaining 0.3 strokes per round. That's pretty solid, right? What we're used to seeing from an Adam Schenk. Off the tee, been a slight positive. He's actually been very accurate off the tee of late. That's really what's carried him in that category there. And of course, the hot putter. That's why we've seen some of these top end finishes from him. And even though he's been putting above his baseline, much like a Joel Dahmen, almost all of the measured rounds for Adam Schenk are on Bermuda grass. I believe it's 16 of the 24 for Adam Schenk. So to see him putting up those kind of numbers is very encouraging going forward. If we take a look at some of the advanced metrics, not the best on par 4s, which is not ideal there, but a lot of those other categories more than offset it. If we take a look at the driving stats, not very great, right? Driving accuracy, hasn't hit many fairways. In terms of driving distance, has never really gone the ball out there. But much like we mentioned before, if there's any part of the game you can get away with here, it's going to be that off the tee play. So the fact that he's a great approach player, has been making a ton of putts on Bermuda grass of late, makes him a very intriguing diamond in the rough for me this week. And now finally, guys, we're going to go over to our pure flyer play of the week. And to be honest with you, I am much more confident in this flyer play than I am most weeks. It's Pat Perez at $6,600. In terms of a course fit ranking, is top 15 for this field. The recent form hasn't been anything to write home about, but for him to be top 30 in the field and priced in this mid 6K range, that is inherent value there. So let's do a deep dive here on Mr. Pat Perez, who's only coming in with 1.2% expected ownership. So first off with his game, we know he's short off the tee, right? Pat Perez is always complaining that he's not long enough to play these PGA Tour courses. If only he had a short track, and that's exactly what he gets this week at Waialae. So off the tee has been a slight loser of late. Still very accurate. That's why he's close to a neutral player off the tee. Never really going to be a significant gainer there, or he's really going to differentiate himself and where he's going to post top 10s, potentially even a win once more in his career. I think he's got the magic in him one more time, as with the approach play and the putting. So I know we've said that over and over here in the video, but that is exactly what I'm hammering home on here. And he's one of the only players in this range to have gains on approach and on putting and on Bermuda grass for his career, and still be like a PGA Tour level player, right? You might have somebody down here like a Jim Furyk, who has also been gaining on approach and also been gaining on Bermuda for his career, but he also hasn't been playing much golf of late, right? His 24 measured rounds are over like almost a year and a half at this point. There's a few other guys that are slightly gaining in both categories. Ryan Moore down here, gaining 0.4 strokes on approach. His putting a slight negative, though he is a gainer in Bermuda. So just really the only person we don't have any questions mark here is about Pat Perez. In terms of some of the advanced metrics, they're very ugly, right? He hasn't been in the best form. Pat Perez isn't always going to look like the best player on tour, but if you really break it down into what he excels at, it's the wedge play. We know it's that putting as well. He's also very good at avoiding some of those 3 putts. Really going to like him there at $6,600. And the cherry on top for this play is that he's 1.2% owned. So being completely neglected by the industry is somebody who I think has a legit chance to finish top 10 this week, if not top 5, if he can find some magic off the tee. That's all I've got for the core picks, guys. Thank you guys for stopping by and enjoying the content. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my channel here, highly recommend you guys go ahead and do so. That way you guys don't miss any of the content I'm posting in the future, whether it's course breakdowns, which I already have my course breakdown for Waialae Country Club already up on the channel, or my core picks for other tournaments, our fades and sleepers. We have a DFS live stream for golf every Wednesday covering the weather, any last second adjustments, everything like that. So make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of that. Down in the comments, go ahead and let me know who you guys have winning this week. Maybe you have an outright bet on someone already. Maybe you agree with one of my core picks and think they come through for the win this week, or have somebody completely off the board. I would love to hear from you guys. So go ahead and let me know who you guys have as your winner down in those comments. Really appreciate all of your support here on the channel, guys. If you haven't already liked the video, make sure you do that as well. We're going to have our value picks and our fades and sleepers coming out this evening, so make sure to keep an eye out for those videos and of course check them out when they go live. Good luck with all of your lineups for this weekend, and of course, let's get this cash.